So let's bring in tonight's Bream Team panel to discuss what dominated today's news cycle and to talk about how we move forward. Democratic strategist Kevin Walling, First Baptist Church of Dallas, Texas pastor Robert Jeffress, and Republican Senate for U.S. Senate in Arkansas and former New England Patriots defensive end Jake Bequette. Great to have all of you back with us tonight.
Good evening, Shannon. Good to be with you.
I want to read a little bit more of President Biden's statement tonight. He said, "I ran on a promise to bring Americans together because I believe that what unites us is far greater than what divides us. I know that we're not going to heal our country's wounds overnight, but I remain steadfast in my commitment to do everything in my power to ensure that every American is treated equally with fairness and dignity under the law." Pastor, you go on Twitter and it's pretty evenly split, it seems, by people who view this verdict in very different ways. How does the country heal? How do we get a sense of respect for each other, of justice, of fairness? How do we move forward?
Shannon, I think we have to acknowledge, first of all, that we are more divided as a nation today than any time in history since the Civil War. And for there to be a healing, a unity in our nation, two things have to happen. First of all, we have to speak truth to one another. Any unity that is not based on truth is a phony kind of unity. And the truth is, today's verdict was not based on racism or injustice. It was a just verdict that was based on the laws of our country. Laws, by the way, that were based on God's law, the Bible. Both the Old and the New Testaments extol the right for individuals to defend their property and to defend their own lives, even if that costs somebody else their life. That's in the Bible. But beyond speaking truth to one another, I think we have to acknowledge there's a need for a healing in our country, a transformation in our country that will only happen when the human hearts of individuals are changed. And government is absolutely powerless to affect the kind of change in the human heart that we need. And that's only something the gospel of Jesus Christ can do. Only the gospel can bring us the change most of us desire and all of us need.
Yeah, we all need, as I say, always a sinner saved by grace. We all need compassion and forgiveness and help to find our way to each other in respect. Now, there are many people who see this differently than the pastor does. Jake, another former NFL player, Colin Kaepernick tweeting today, "We just witnessed a system built on white supremacy validate the terroristic acts of a white supremacist. This can only be further validating the need to abolish our current system. White supremacy cannot be reformed." Your reaction?
That rhetoric is so disgraceful. And I stand with Kyle Rittenhouse because he showed real bravery in two aspects. First of all, last year when so many of our elected leaders stood down and did nothing as American cities burned, Kyle Rittenhouse went in. During the daytime, he helped clean up that city. And by night, when his family's small business and his own property was threatened, he defended it. And when a bloodthirsty mob tried to take his life, he justifiably defended himself. That's the first instance. The second is during this trial. I'm sure he was under tremendous pressure to plead down to lesser charges to make this go away. The corrupt DA and prosecutor knew the evidence was bad, but he once again risked his own life to take this trial to a jury verdict, which exposed two things. First of all, it exposed the truth and the facts about this case. But secondly, it also exposed the level of depravity of our corporate legacy media that is stoking the fires of racism and hatred all over this country. It has to stop.
Kevin, I want to bring you in here. Tulsi Gabbard, a Democrat, you guys are from the same party, tweets this. She says, "The jury got it right, finding Rittenhouse not guilty on all charges. The fact that charges were brought before any serious investigation is evidence that the government was motivated by politics, which itself should be considered criminal." Are you worried about how this seemed to cross over from primarily a legal issue to one that turned into a political or racial issue?
Absolutely, Shannon, I am. And I agree with the pastor that this country needs a healing. I am really happy to see Jeff's reporting and Brian's reporting from the streets of Kenosha and streets of New York. And maybe we're seeing a little bit of that healing in that we're seeing peaceful protests. We're not seeing violence break out in the wake of this verdict. And I hate that politics has creeped into this, and we see it through the lens of politics with this decision. I reject fundamentally those on the left that say that Kyle is intrinsically evil. I don't think that's the case whatsoever. And I also reject on the right people that glorify what he did. It's a sad state of affairs that a 17-year-old felt compelled to go to this city in distress with this assault rifle and meet this mob head on. I hate that that happened. And that's a sad situation for this country. It's a sad situation for the victims and their families, and for him, who will live with this now going forward. But I hate, again, that politics has creeped into all of this. We need healing, as the pastor suggests, and maybe that first step are these peaceful protests that we see on the streets.
Yeah, it's such a good point, Kevin. It is good to see that people are exercising their First Amendment rights, whether they're dissatisfied or happy with the result today. And doing it peacefully, we can do that, and it is good to see that in our city streets tonight so far, and we hope that remains. Pastor, is this something that you'll talk about on Sunday, or that you think should be addressed in houses of worship this weekend?
Well, I think it can be, and I think we ought to be praying. Look, this whole thing is a tragedy. What happened to Kyle is a tragedy. We ought to be praying for the families of those people who were shot and killed. And look, I don't think there's going to be any great kumbaya coming together. Our nation is too divided in its opinions. But I think to keep a civil war from happening, we need to be civil to one another. And I think the best we can hope for is a tolerance toward one another. I define tolerance as respecting the right of other people to be wrong. And I think we need to exercise that kind of tolerance in our country.
Jake, really quick before we get cut off, you want to join the fray here on Capitol Hill. It's been a little bit ugly in the wake of this today. Are you hopeful, as the pastor talks about, and Kevin too, that we can turn things around?
Well, I share the pastor's beliefs that all of us are made in the image of God. Human life is precious. You know, all of us, including Christians, have the right to defend ourselves and our property, as he said. And I'm not as optimistic as he is about us coming together. Unfortunately, the radical left, they want to destroy this country. And part of the reason I'm going to Washington is to fight back and stand up for this country. I'm simply not going to accept it, as so many invisible establishment Republicans have. I'm going to fight.
All right, Jake, Kevin, and Pastor, thank you all for your time and your input on this tonight. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Shannon. God
Thank you,
bless.
Shannon.
God bless you guys, too. All right, a giant cat or a teeny tiny train. Plus, SWAT taking down a suspect during a hostage situation. The LAPD releasing chilling new body cam video of those moments. The day's best viral videos up next.